Hi, everybody. Welcome to today's webinar. We're going to talk about self-assessments in WARP today. Thank you, everybody, so much for coming today. This is a topic that we get a lot of questions about. I know that when everybody's starting to grade for the first time, there's a lot of confusion and hesitation. So I thought that we would go over this today in the WARP platform. So first of all, we're often asked, why should I grade my own work? So this is a very valuable tool so that you can learn from your errors as you go along. This way you'll improve as you go rather than making the same mistakes again and again. And I know that there are some students that would rather not look back at any of their work, and what can happen there is just, again, you'll make the same errors over and over again. So you'll want to make sure that you grade all of the ones that are labeled as required, as they are just that, they're required. It's up to you if you want to grade the optional ones, so we'll get into that soon. But really, I can tell you that when I took this course and I was doing some of the self-assessments, that's when I really could pick things apart and figure out where I was going wrong, and if I needed to ask for help, I could do so. So let's get into this. What do I need to get started for grading? So I've got a list here. You want to have your directions on how to self-grade, your punctuation guide, your acceptable variations guide, the account specifics, which, by the way, do not come to you until body as a whole. So if you're before body as a whole, don't worry about that. And I do recommend your book of style if you've at least started grammar and style chapter. Now, I will get into each of these a little bit more detailed in a moment, but if you look at our little picture on the right hand side there, what that clip is, and you'll see this momentarily when I get into the reports, but when you open a report to grade, these links will be in the top left corner, and they're links often to what we need to have open when we're grading. So you can find the account specifics there. There's a video on how to self-grade. There's the acceptable variations guide and directions on how to self-grade, which I'll show you, which is just more text, and it has a chart there to show you the different deduction types and what they're about. So I wanted to go and open some of these things and show you where to find them. So I do have to leave the PowerPoint presentation for a moment, and I'm going to open up my course. So one thing I did want to point out is that if you were to go into the FAQ page, so you click on FAQ, type in WARP, there are instructions here on how to grade. There are screenshots and so on here as well, video, all kinds of information about WARP. So if you're just getting familiar with WARP, this is one place that you can go. I'm just going to close that for now. And then into the course, if you click on the content tab, and then when that loads, just below the search bar here, it says overview. You want to click on that. So just to point out, there is a self-assessment guide. There's a video on how to self-grade. Here's your punctuation guide, which I'm going to open for now. There's the account specifics, which I'll open up. Oh, that opened up in the same page. I want to open them in a separate page. So I'm going to right click on it and hit open a new tab. And then I want to have my book of style open. So I just happen to have that downloaded to my desktop, but if you use it on the web browser, you might want to have that open. So let's go back to our list here. So we have directions on self-grade. I'm going to open when we get in there. Got my punctuation guide, acceptable variations guide. I'm going to open when I'm in there. I've got my account specifics, and I've got my book of style now. Okay, so let's get into this in a little bit more detail. So the first thing I want to show you is your WARP homepage, which is now called the dashboard. So this is when you very first log in and open up WARP. You want to make sure that under self-assessment or select assessment, you have your course selected. The first thing you're going to see are your assigned transcriptions for that chapter. If you're just opening the chapter for the first time and you don't see anything there, just click on download new or download transcriptions and they will load for you. So here's like our to-do list, if you will, of what we need to transcribe. We scroll down a little bit more, you will see the required self-grading. So these are the ones that you have to grade. They are not going towards your final mark in the course, but they are a complete versus incomplete sort of activity. And we do look at them every now and then. When you hit a milestone in the course, an instructor is going to go in and check your grading, make sure that it's being done and that it's fairly accurate. We're not looking for utter perfection, but we're looking to see that you've selected all of the new error types, done the whole thing, and tried your best on it. Below that, we have the optional self-grading. So just as the name suggests, it's up to you if you want to do these or not. Some students find it really helpful to grade all of the reports. So if you wish to grade the optional ones, that's up to you. So these are the ones that we're going to look at today, these 4. Excuse me. So the other thing that you really want to take note of is when you're doing your self-assessments, you need to open them from your dashboard. Don't open them from your history, or you cannot grade there. So you do need to be on this page, your dashboard, okay? So I'm going to open one from the keyboarding techniques. So as you can see, I've got a couple of chapters here that are from before the account specifics are introduced, your first chapter with the account specifics, and one a little bit later on. So you can see how things evolve a little bit as we go. So I'm going to open up the one from keyboarding. So I need to click on grade. And this opens up our report. So again, here are the links that I was showing you before. So we've already got our punctuation guide. We've got our account specifics. If you'd like a video to follow along on how to self-grade, you can do that. I do want to open up the directions on how to self-grade, and I want to show you this. So this will have the step-by-step instructions with your screenshots. And if we keep scrolling down, this is what I was hoping to find. So this is a chart that outlines what each of the deduction types is for. And I know when I was learning to self-grade that I like to have this open in another tab, and that way I could just go back and forth between my report and what the categories were so I could quickly see. So as you can see here, we'll start down at the bottom. There are minor errors. So these are things that don't really change the meaning of a sentence. They tend to be very short words, was, as, at, those types of things. Punctuation is in here as well. You will note there's a no point value. So if you notice a punctuation difference that is not on the punctuation guide to deduct for, you could hit no point value. So these are all little things that will not affect the meaning at all. And then we have major errors. So these would be words that usually they're a little bit longer, like maybe 4 or 5 letters or more. They would change the meaning of a sentence often. Vital signs, protocol failures, which is when you've reached body as a whole. If you have made an error because it doesn't follow an account specifics rule, that would be a protocol error. So major medical words and so on. So you'll want to have a look at these in a bit more detail, and we will talk about them a bit more as we go. And then your critical errors. So these are generally errors that could cause harm to a patient. If you have an incorrect allergy or medication dose, or the diagnosis is wrong. Now you'll notice that this talks about omitted dictation. So generally, if you have text that you didn't transcribe, that's worth 3 points or more. That's an omitted dictation. So yeah, think about things that could either affect their care. So say the weight was way off, that could affect dosage and so on. If the age was quite a bit off, that could affect their care. Like I said, an incorrect allergy could definitely affect care because you could end up giving them something they're allergic to. So think about something that would affect the patient's care, harm the patient, so on. All right, so those are our instructions. We have our account specifics for when we do reach body as a whole. We have our punctuation guide. So the punctuation guide is a list of punctuation errors that we do deduct for. So the first list there are all different punctuation errors that we would count off. And then the second list are punctuation errors that we don't deduct for in the course. So this is something that you'll want to have open And I also found this really helpful to have open when I was actually transcribing and I was struggling with punctuation there. So sometimes just looking at the different sentences and saying, okay, this is structured a lot like my sentence, that could help me figure out punctuation. So I kind of had this open all of the time. So we've got our punctuation guide. So we're ready to go. We've got our book of style. So back to the report. So let's have a look at things. You're going to notice that there are some boxes that are purple and some that are green. So basically, your error will be in purple and the correction will be in green. If you see something that is green and there's nothing purple beside it, it means that you've missed something that the key has. If you see something purple and there's nothing green beside it, it means that you've added something that the key doesn't have. Okay, now sometimes there are some acceptable variations, and that is another thing. Here's the link to that you can open up. Acceptable variations talks about differences that you may see that look like errors in the report, but they're actually okay either way. So we will talk about that as well. Okay, you will notice, sorry, this is a little bit, there we go, that's a little nicer. You'll notice the corner of every box has a number. So I'm going to see if I can zoom in a bit here. That's a little easier to see. So box number 1, box number 2, and so on. Okay, so that will help us as we go along and I try to explain. So as we saw in the chart of the different errors, here they are here. Now something that's been added in Warp is if you hover over an error type, the explanation will pop right up. So that's very handy as well. So you don't necessarily have to have that chart open. So now you can just hover over the different error types. I will note that incomplete or nonsensical is meant just for the instructors to use if a student did not complete a report. If you're grading yourself, you do need to go through and grade each separate error, okay? So let's start with the very first error. So syndrome should be syndromes. It's the same word. It's a difference in the plural, but it says syndrome are should be syndromes are. So this is a plural agreement issue. This is a grammar issue. So what do we do with this? We want to click on the error. So once you click on it, you'll notice the letters turn white. That means you've got a hold of it. If you think you've got it and it doesn't go white and you go to click on an error, it doesn't work properly, and I'm really famous for that. I think that I've got a hold of it. I just click quickly and I come over here and I don't actually have it. So just make sure that that goes white. So syndromes are should be syndromes are. That is a grammar, like I said. So we're going to come over now. We've got that selected and we're going to pick our error type. Grammar. This includes verb subject agreement, singular plural errors, etc. This also includes verb tense. So this is a plural agreement error. So I'm going to click on grammar, and then what you'll see is the corresponding error pops down below. So the error number that you're on. So this error number 1 is corresponding to the one in the box. It shows what the word was and what the deduction type was. If you wish to make a comment, something like plural agreement error, you're free to. That's optional. It will tell you how many points that deduction was worth. If you realize that you did that mistakenly and you want to delete it, just click on delete. Do you want to delete? Sure do. Okay. But I actually do want that there, so I'm going to put it back. Okay. So repetitive motion injuries and overuse syndromes are most often due to repetitive motion injuries and is quite common. And it should be R for syndromes are. This is another plural agreement error, but because we've actually just made a plural agreement error, we don't need to deduct for the same mistake once, and so, or sorry, more than once. So something that you want to watch out for is if you've made the same mistake more than once, you deduct one time. So another example might be that you misspelled the same word the same way 4 times. You're only going to deduct for the first. If you spelled that same word incorrectly 4 different ways, you're going to deduct for each separate one. So in this case, this is another plural agreement error. We've already deducted for that. So I can select it and just hit a no point value, which is over here. just to indicate that I saw it. I could make a point to say, you know, same as number 1 if I want, or you don't have to comment if you don't want to. Okay, 5 and 6, 7 and 8. What has happened here? I don't know if I need to maybe, sorry, I'm having a bit of trouble with this being a bit jumpy. What's happened here is that we put a comma where a period should be. We've created a run-on sentence, which is something we deduct for in the punctuation guide. So I'm going to hit number 5 and I'm going to select the punctuation error. Now, if we look at 7 and 8, the only reason that you didn't capitalize the word these is because you had a comma before it instead of a period. So in a case like this where one error is made due to another, we're only going to deduct for the root cause. So in this case, we deducted for the punctuation. That's what caused this capitalization difference. So we don't need to deduct for number 7. Okay, let me come into number 9 and 10. Patents should be patients. You have no idea how often I see this. It's very easy to miss an I when we're proofreading. So this would be a major word error because they have completely different meanings. So even though it's only one letter's difference, the meaning is changed. So I'm going to select number 9, and now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to look. Patents should be patients. I could consider this an English word. I could consider it a medical word because patients is a medical word. Either one, they're both worth 1.5. So I'm just going to select English word. So as you note, as I am adding these on, they're all stacking up on the bottom. Something that you may notice is that they're going in reverse error. So the first one I deducted on the bottom, the most recent one on the top. The reason that we've done this is that if you're making comments in your box, it saves you a lot of scrolling to have the most recent one you put at the top all the time. So you could type in a comment, move to your next error, and it's always right there at the top. If it's frustrating you and you want to see them in chronological order, if you look at the little number sign beside the word error and click on it, it will put them in chronological order. So either way is fine. I'm going to keep them going in reverse order for now so that I can keep adding. And I like the one that I most recently had at the top. I find that very, very handy. Okay, so 11 and 12, pre-form versus per form. So again, we've only reversed a couple of letters, but it is a completely different word. So I'm going to count that. I've got it selected and I'm going to pick English word error. Okay, so now we've done very well for quite a long time. And now we're at 13 and 14. So what has happened here is that there is a comma in the key that we didn't put in. And a lot of people will ask, what is this blank box beside it? So you will notice that with punctuation errors, you can see here 15, 17, 19. If it's just a punctuation difference, you'll always see those two boxes and you can just ignore the blank box. It's just that you put a comma in, you hit the space bar. That's really all it is. So this is really only one error, not two. So don't let those blank boxes bother you. So this particular error is a comma after an introductory element, which is in the punctuation guide under the section that we don't deduct for. So you can either skip it or you could select it and hit no point value. It's completely up to you. In the next section here, we actually have a list of things: carpal tunnel syndrome, ulnar nerve compression, or sciatica. And we need to have commas between our itemized items, if you will, our listed items. So I'm going to select 15 and I'm going to hit punctuation error. You will notice the punctuation error is only 0.25. The next comma is the exact same mistake. We're just missing a comma in our list, so you don't need to deduct for that again. Okay, you should exercise regularly, at least 35 minutes per day, and get plenty of sleep. So there's a couple of things going on here. It looks like they've either tried to create a list or they're tried to create an interrupting element because they missed and. But we don't deduct for interrupting elements, so I'm actually going to leave that alone. 35 as a word versus a numeral. Now, This is a rule that's introduced in the account specifics in the body as a whole. It would be a protocol error at that point that we want to use Arabic numbers. But in this first chapter, you're brand new, you haven't learned that yet. So I would give you just a no point comment about that. It's not something that you have learned in the very first chapter. So don't worry about it. You've got the right number and you'll know moving forward to use Arabic numbers for numerals. Okay, and now in this case, the word and is there and we missed it. So I'm going to select that and I'm going to hit a minor word. It doesn't change the meaning. It's just a little word there. So I'm going to hit English word error in the minor section. Okay, in doing so versus in so doing. So we've just flipped the two words around by accident. It does not change the meaning. So I'm going to just pick one or the other. And I tend to give this a minor miscellaneous error. So you have just flipped the two words, but the meaning isn't changed. So it's a minor error. You can avoid the repercussions of overuse syndromes. Okay, so this is a minor error. It's a minor word that was missed. But just as a word to the wise, if you have missed the words a, an, or the, so they're called articles, a, an, or the. And it doesn't change the meaning of the sentence and it doesn't affect the grammar, then we don't deduct. So sometimes the dictator is pausing and they say, it sounds like the, they say, sounds like a. If you've accidentally put it in or missed it and it does not affect grammar and it does not affect meaning, then we don't worry about it. If you want to listen back to it to help build on your ear and see if you can pick it up, that's great. But we don't have to deduct for this. I can just go a no point value. If you wish to give yourself a minor English, that's completely up to you. What I do find that some students are way too hard on themselves. They're deducting for, you know, missing the word the here where it doesn't affect anything, or they might be missing the word the and they might give themselves an omitted dictation because they missed a word. But an omitted dictation is a 3-point error. It's a critical error, and missing the word the is certainly not a critical error. So sometimes students are just far too hard on themselves when they're grading. So just keep in mind that difference. And example where it would cause an error would be she is a 80-year-old instead of an 80-year-old. That would be a grammar mistake. Or he is 5-year-old boy, should be he is a 5-year-old boy. That would be a grammar error. But in this case, you can avoid repercussions. You can avoid the repercussions. It doesn't make a difference, so we don't need to deduct. Okay. Maintain good posture habits and your body will thank you in the long run. This one I can see both ways. Some people might say this is a list of two things, so we don't need a comma before and. Other people could say this is comma needed before a conjunction. Maintain good posture habits is a complete sentence and your body will thank you in the long run is a complete sentence. So I would consider this an acceptable variation and I would not deduct. Okay, here we've written out the word to, should be the numeral to. This is the exact same mistake as up here, 35 versus 35, so we don't need to deduct. And again, it's up to you if you want to skip it or if you want to click on it and hit no point value. It's completely up to you. Okay. Muscles fire repeatedly for hours at a time. Produces muscle tension versus produced. So this is a difference in the tense. So this is generally a minor error unless it's going to affect the meaning. If there was some sort of a agreement error or a subject-verb agreement error because of that, then it would be a grammar error. But in this case, it's just a tense difference. So there is no specific category. Oh, there we've got tense. A minor would be okay as well, but tense is where we're going. Now, if I had made another tense error in this report, I wouldn't deduct for it. Okay, hands, wrists, and fingers. So this is the same error as up above, where we miss the commas in a list. Up here, 15 and 17. So it's the same mistake. We've already deducted it before. So we don't need to deduct for it again. If you want to hit no point value and make a comma or comment that's the same as above, that's fine. Okay, draping your rest over the desk shelf over wrist. So these have very different meanings. So I'm going to select rest, and this is just an English word. So I'm going to go into the major category and find English word. And there we go. Whoops, I'm sorry, I'm really having troubles with this jumping around today. Okay, so draping your wrist over the desk shelf or resting your arms or elbows. So in this case, we have a list of things here that are all separated by or. You will not have learned this in the keyboarding chapter yet because you haven't done your grammar and punctuation. So we do tend to be a bit more lenient when you're in the keyboarding because it's really just practicing and getting to getting the feel of typing while you listen and proofreading and all that. Now, if this was after grammar and style, we would deduct because if all items in a list are separated by and or, we don't use a comma. But in keyboarding, I would leave it, but I'm just going to put a punctuation guide or error in there now. Okay, arms or elbow should be elbows. So this is a plural difference. It's not causing a grammar mistake. It's just the difference between one elbow or two elbows. So I'm going to just count this as a minor error. There is no minor medical word error, so I'm just going to go with a minor English word error. And I will say to everybody, the tense form, the plural form, and the tiny little English words are what are going to take your ear the longest to get used to. So try to be patient with those. Okay, so we have armrest versus arm rests, which it is another plural error, but it's a different word. So I am going to deduct for that again. For a minor error. Leaning on an open window versus the open window. So again, this is an at and the sort of difference. It doesn't affect grammar. It doesn't change the meaning, so I'm not going to deduct. Okay, so jackhammer as two words should be jackhammer one word. So in this case, you're just going to pick either one or the other. These errors go together as one mistake. You don't need to deduct once for jack and once for hammer, as I often will see. So I'm going to pick one, and this is a major word, and I didn't spell it correctly, so I'm going to do an English word, major. Okay. Forceful exertions are similar to a worker using a jackhammer as they create jarring injuries. So again, this comma could be seen as being needed before a conjunction. I see that as an acceptable variation. I'm not going to deduct. So if we come down here, it's all of our errors there in reverse. So I'm just going to now click on that number sign to get them in chronological order. And so we can go down, see which each one is worth. And then at the bottom is the tally, what we scored on that report. And if you wish to make a comment, you know, I don't know, watch out for plural agreement. It's up to you. Again, it's not required. It's just up to you. If you have questions for instructors, please do not write them here in the comment box because we don't necessarily see all of your reports. We will open reports randomly. We can't guarantee we'll see your question when you're grading. So if you do have a question, just contact us directly. You can come by chat, phone, or email, and we're happy to help you guys. So anyway, so that's up to you if you want to do that. Again, you can listen back to your report. You can, if you don't find that these preset speeds are what you want, you can just slide it over with your cursor. I do recommend listening back to all of your reports, trying to hear the word differences. I found that this really helped me build my ear over time. It really does take time to do, so I always highly recommend that. So we're all set to go. So I can hit save and keep working. If you want to save as you go, you can. I can hit save and exit. And if say I wasn't done it, I can come back to it later, or I can hit submit. I know that this will auto save every few minutes, but I'm just like to save my work before I do anything with it. So I'm going to hit save and then I'm going to hit submit. Do I want to submit? I sure do. So just be careful too that we have had people say that a report submitted accidentally, but just remember you have to hit submit once and then confirm that you want it to submit. So you are hitting two buttons before it will go, and then hit OK. So now we're back to the home page. I'm going to show you these reports in the history when we're done. But for now, I just want to show you the rest of the examples that we have. Okay, so medical report formatting. That chapter comes after the grammar and style. So we now have learned more about grammar, more about punctuation, but we have not yet reached body as a whole. So we haven't been introduced to the account specifics yet. So that's good to keep in mind as we go to grade this. Okay. So we have a title here for this. So these reports that come before the medical reports, they often will have a title at the start. And it's just like the title of a magazine article, for instance, where we're only capping certain words. We're not doing it in all caps. It is not a sentence, which is there should not be a period there. So just keep that in mind before you get to body as a whole, that a lot of them do have just titles, and it just be like the title to a story so much. So I'm going to click on consultation. The word is spelled correctly when I look at it, but I didn't capitalize it. So I'm going to click on that and choose capitalization error. And then we can see it pop up down below. Okay, so consultations are most often done after referral from versus a referral. So first of all, I missed the word a, but it doesn't affect the grammar, so I'm not worried about that. But I have spelled referral incorrectly. And even though, like I said earlier, it's one letter's difference, it's still a major word. So I'm going to come over here to the major section and choose English word error. Okay, inpatient versus inpatient. This is a medical word. It should be one word. So like I said before, we're not going to deduct for 8 and 9. We're just going to choose one because these two words should be one word. So pick either one of them. And this is a medical word, inpatient. So I'm going to come to the major section, medical word error, and select that. Outpatient's the same type of error, but it's a completely different word. So I am going to do the same type of error. Okay, basic 4 versus basic 4 capitalized with the asterisks. There's a couple of things to talk about here. The asterisks are put in some of the keys from the school as a footnote to give the students information about really common errors to try to help explain them. You never want to put asterisks in your own reports. You never want to put footnotes in your own reports. So these are just for us to get information across to you. So if I were to scroll to the bottom here, I would see the footnote about this, which is a bit hard to read with this. So I am going to scroll up. Okay, if I hit the answer key, I'm going to see the key without all of the green and purple, and I can scroll down now and read that footnote nice and easily. Basic 4 is the actual name. Please refer to 1.1 in the book of style. So if I want to open up my book of style and I want to go to 1.1 and open it up, I've actually highlighted that spot where it refers to admitting history and physical consultations, operative reports, and discharge summaries are your basic 4, and that is how they write it. Capitalized. So the asterisks can be ignored, but what we're looking here is that we just didn't capitalize it. So I'm going to give it a capitalization error. Sorry about all these little pop-ups. And I only needed to do it for the one because it's one error together. Okay, reports for an acute care transcription. Again, an is added. It's quite possible the dictator pause went there. So I'm not going to deduct for that. Outpatient. Okay, so this is full of protocol errors. Number 29, you can see I left a blank, but this blank is longer than 5 underscores, which is what it's supposed to be. And you can always just copy it if you want. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great day.